What's up out there? Today we're going to talk about the defense skill in Melvor Idol. Now this is just continuing on down the skills series that I've got going on. We've done attack and we've done strength. This is the third melee skill, and this actually feeds into ranged and magic. It helps determine your combat level and stuff like that. This is a very important skill, but it's kind of a very useless skill at the same time, and I'll get into what I mean by that here in a second. I have a demonstration running here that I'll point some things out when we get there, but the basics of defense is that you are going to raise the defense level so that you can equip gear. This divine gear that I have on here, well, actually we can just go to smithing. And if we go to say divine gear and I click on this and view the item stats, I need to be a defensive level 110 in order to equip this. So the only reason you're going to raise your defense is to equip better gear. There's pretty much no other reason you're going to bother with it. That's why I say it's a very critical skill, is that it allows you to equip better gear. That's the only thing you're trying to hit with this. With something like attack, you're going to get more accuracy. With something like strength, you're going to hit harder. With defense, the only thing you're really doing is equipping better gear. Now, defense, hit points, and prayer, along with another factor, make up your combat level. So the way this works, and we did a speed run or something somewhere where we could only raise what our combat level was. So your combat level is defined by defense, hit points, and prayer, in addition to either attack and strength or ranged or magic. So if you're doing on the melee side, you have to combine attack and strength together to raise your combat level. That's what determines your combat level. So I think I had a comment a couple weeks ago, it comes to mind, somebody was asking what combat level they needed to be. I've never used a combat level for anything in this game. The only time we did, I think it was a speed run. I don't think that's how adventure mode works. I think adventure mode works by buying the other skills. I don't think you're limited to the combat level. It's been a while since I've done that, and I don't remember what speed run it was, but I want to say there was something where we were locked under combat level. And the only way you could raise that was by increasing both attack and strength, or working on ranged, or working on magic. Because the formula is the combat style, so melee actually makes up two different combat skills, which is attack and strength, and then your defense, hit points, and prayer. So I'm kind of getting a little bit long on that whole conversation, but that's where your combat level is, and combat level is kind of whatever. It doesn't really matter. In my opinion, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference unless we were doing a speed run. But defense is one of the big skills that contributes to that with hit points and prayer. So if you're trying to get a bigger number on combat level, that's how you raise it. Now, that also kind of explains how you get combat level. I picked the wrong thing here. The combat level 29, that's basically this monster's version of whatever things go into making that combat level. It's all on the back end. We don't really care. Combat level is kind of a gauge on what you can go fight. However, if you go to the strongest stuff in the game, this is combat level 1485, and this is a full completion account only at combat level 153. So it's kind of a number that doesn't really matter. If you're looking at it, you're gonna be like, all right, that's a pretty thick character or thick creature to go fight, and I can't go fight it. So what does defense actually do besides allowing you to equip better gear? Well, raising your defense also increases your evasion, I believe. I believe that goes into all of the evasion, and that's why it plays into ranged or magic. And if you switch your combat style, like I don't have a weapon equipped right here, but if I had a wand, I could do evasive or defense magic, whatever it's called. If I had a bow, I could do a defense. You know what? Maybe I should just go ahead and equip that, because then we can demonstrate. Let me find something very basic here. I got to look through my inventory and figure out where I have everything. If we go to the very simplest, we'll do a bronze crossbow. I don't have any bolts though, but we can beat on this thing. It actually, can I do? Yeah, I'm still doing some damage. Okay. So I have this long range. Now this actually, if you notice up here, you'll see my accuracy goes from 18,000 to 18, well, I guess I got to get down to the numbers, 18,180 to 18,584. So it does change something. It changes your evasion a little bit. You see, you go from rapid shot at 364,000 evasion over to 373,000. So it does increase that, but it decreases your maximum hit. So we go, or actually it does increase. I guess I'm leaned more into it here. It gets goofy because you get this 3 hidden range level and 3 hidden defense, whereas this is different. This has got 6 hidden range, so we go from 209 down to 205. The rapid shot really is kind of a red herring on this one. If we go to accurate, you do the most damage. If you go to the defensive, you do a little bit less damage, but you have a chance of building up your evasion. And your evasion is basically avoiding the enemy's attack. So if we do the same thing with, let's see here, where do I have a wand? It'd probably be easier to just search for the basic magic wand. And we're gonna see the same thing here. So as soon as this thing respawns, we're gonna hit for 41. We've got an evasion of 360,000. Well, it changed. There's 368. Now we're at 381. And our damage goes from 39 to 41. So we actually lose damage. And I always thought that when you used, like, for the magic or ranged, when you used this defensive part, I always thought you lost XP. I thought it shared the XP. I don't think it shares the XP. I think you just do less damage overall. So you're not hitting as hard. And you want the most damage for the most XP. And I think that's probably where I got a little bit sideways on things, was because the way I thought it worked was that like if I switch over to slash, I'm going to hit for 482 instead of 464. So pretty much you hit harder with the non-block. Well, in this case, it's block. So if I do anything other than block, I'm going to hit harder. Stab kind of hits for about the same. But I always thought when you did ranged, or when you tried to level up defense from ranged or magic, I always thought it kind of split the XP in half or something like that, or split 75, 25 or something like that. It's not really splitting the XP. It's just doing less damage because you're not hitting as hard. So I typically don't ever use ranged or magic to train defense. I just train straight up defense. And we'll get into the training aspect here in a minute, but I wanted to point out how this works, because to try to explain why I do things the way I do. So, defensive skill, the more defense you have, the higher your evasion. So if you're a lower level character, the less evasion you're going to have. And I've done up as much evasive gear as I could put on because I want to demonstrate something here in a second. The defensive skill is required for equipping armor, as we've discussed. Now, here's where I'm going to break off, and we're going to have a conversation about chance to hit, damage reduction, and evasion. So typically, you're not going to care about evasion. You are never going to directly care about the evasion that you have. You're going to care about the damage reduction you take and all the things that can reduce the damage you're going to receive. The example that I'm trying to demonstrate here, if you'll watch when the dragon breathes fire. So if we look at the stats on this, I have 374,000 evasion. This thing has a 1% chance to hit. And you see me taking fire damage. That 1% chance means it will always hit with fire damage with this dragon breath. Now let's take a step back and explain this interface in case this is not explained somewhere. I know I've explained it. I think it was in my top 5 things I wished I knew video or something like that. That was so long ago. So the chance to hit, as I understand it, this chance to hit right here in the offensive stats for the monster is what determines how often this thing can hit you. So it has a 1% chance. 99% of the time, this thing will miss. Now, this up here where it says lesser dragon breath 10% and normal attack 90%, that does not mean it's going to hit you 90% of the time, or it's only going to hit you 10% of the time. What this up here, the special attacks, what these percentages mean is how often it's going to use that special attack. So 90% of the time, this thing's going to perform a normal attack, which is the blue bar moving across the top. When it switches to the yellow bar, like now, it's going to do the lesser dragon breath. That should be roughly 10% of the time. Now, you would expect that I could avoid 99% of that fire breath, but the fire breath never misses, ever. It never misses. The only thing you can do is apply damage reduction so that you take 0 damage. And you'll notice that I've carefully crafted up this gear set. I have the best unupgraded gear that you can get. Now, I think, if memory serves, I think the gear that you get from these guys is just straight up gear, and it's got all damage reduction. So yes, I could equip all the Vorloran stuff. The problem is that is the best gear in the game. The problem is it has tons of damage reduction. So it doesn't necessarily illustrate the point that I'm trying to illustrate. This damage reduction of 3% is as small as I can get it, because some of our pets, like this is a full completion account, so there's a pet that gives damage reduction. There's plenty of ways that damage reduction are coming in that I can't control, I can't get rid of. But what I've done is I'm running the melee evasion potion, which gives you plus 25% melee evasion. We're also running the divine helmet, plate body, plate legs, boots, gloves, and shield. They are not upgraded at all. I could probably put the silver upgrade on here because I don't think that has damage reduction on it, but the point stands. We've got the Amulet of Fury because this does give you some defense bonus, and then the Obsidian Cape because this gives you defense bonus for every defense level that you have. So pretty much and then the Occultist Tablet because it's got 10% global evasion, and then the Silver Sapphire Ring, which has plus 6 melee defense bonus and plus 12 attack bonus. This was basically the best setup that I could get. Oh, and before I forget, we're running Elusivity and Grace. So this gives another 50% global evasion and 40% global evasion. So we're running 382,000 evasion right now. If I turn this off, we go down to 249,000 evasion. I'm still at 1% chance to hit. Like even just putting these 2 prayers on did absolutely nothing. Even though we've gone up a considerable amount of evasion percentage, it's not really helping out on this. It does nothing. So there are prayers that you can, or not prayers, but there's spells you can use that make an enemy harder, less chance to hit and stuff like that. None of it really does any difference. Here's the other thing that's kind of funny. If I take these 2 prayers off and I put Protect Melee on, Protect Melee only works to 20%. As soon as you hit 20%, it actually makes the enemy hit more often. Now watch this. If I turn this on, we went from 1% up to 20%. So this is literally 80% chance to dodge. So if you turn this on, if you have a 19% or less chance to get hit by the monster and you use this, you've increased their chance to hit. It's kind of weird how it works. So now we're back to 1%. It's kind of odd how that all works. But you're always going to hear me talk about damage reduction being the king, and that is exactly why. So if we were to go in and equip, well, let's just do the Vorloran set since I've got it right here. I don't really have that set there, and I've got different gloves, but you're seeing the damage reduction just kick in. We've got 55% damage reduction. I guess I better go find the Vorloran set here. Go equip the entire thing. Let's see. We want this, and I've probably got everything else equipped, and we want that there. So we've got 86% damage reduction. This thing is dealing basically no damage, but you're going to see it still hits and still does damage. It doesn't matter how much evasion that I apply to this. Evasion does nothing. It basically does nothing. And I'm not even equipping a weapon. We could put that gets me 400,000 evasion. There's still a 1% chance for this thing to hit. It does 1 damage. So if it breathes fire, I'm gonna kill it pretty much instantly. But if it does fire damage, it's still not gonna miss. And we gotta wait for it to hit though. So that's why you'll always hear me talking about damage reduction. I can put the Fury of the Elemental Zodiacs on. Now we got 408,000. Of course, this thing needs to use Dragon Breath and not instantly die, but we're still taking damage. Like I'm on fire and I'm still taking damage. So, and the reason that this becomes important, it's not necessarily that big of a deal in standard mode or anything that's not hardcore. As soon as you go to hardcore mode, this becomes critical because a lot of these monsters you will notice that you don't use food for. Having a good evasion is great. That's fine. But you're still going to get hit and you're still going to take damage. In hardcore, you do not regenerate health. So your health will continually go down. If you don't have food, you will drop life as you go. You see, I just took some food, but my auto eats kind of I took some damage, but my auto eat just picked it up. If I was in hardcore mode, I would eventually just die. So that's why I always preach about damage reduction more than I do about anything regarding evasion, because evasion is basically useless. So in hardcore mode, kind of getting back onto that subject, you can die to plants very easily. There is a Steam achievement to dying to a plant, and I actually had to work to get that achievement done because your auto heal, not auto eat, not this, but your regeneration, your health regeneration, as you level up, you regenerate and get more HP and stuff like that. It's very difficult to die to plants under standard mode, and you have to work at it. Basically, what you have to do is go get a lot of your health taken off by some other monster, then come onto a plant and then hope it kills you fast enough before you regenerate enough life. It's kind of a painful process to do, and it's more work than you'd expect. But you can see with just a massive amount of evasion that damage reduction is more key to anything than the evasion is. So I don't ever pay attention to these stats. I don't ever pay attention to combat level. Like, none of that ever matters to me. What I care about is damage reduction and how much max hit that I'm doing. That's pretty much it with this game. So how do you train this skill? Basically, the best way to train this skill, if you go into, we'll just go into smithing here because it's the easiest way to find all the gear. If I go into a bronze dagger, you'll see that I have a block bonus of 7. Daggers are actually good block bonus, but the problem is you can go equip a two-handed sword. It's a little slower, but it does a huge block bonus, and you're going to generate more XP. Keep in mind, you want to do more damage. And yes, you can do faster damage, that's the thing, but in this game, daggers are kind of useless. I would probably go with a two-handed sword over everything, which is at the axe, I think. That's got a +3. The scimitar's got a +1. So really, the dagger is going to give you 7. And we're looking at bronze stuff, by the way. This all scales up as you go. You can look at this at divine gear. So I could look at a divine dagger. This is going to give me a +94 block bonus. The axe is going to give me a +56, which is considerably less. And the scimitar is going to give me a +14, which is vastly less. A sword really has no block damage to it. It's got 45. Where it's at is with the two-handed swords. They're very slow though. But this is going to give me a 223 block bonus, meaning you're going to do a lot of damage. And the key to building up these skills quickly is the most damage you can possibly do. So a two-handed sword is probably going to be the best bet that you can get. You also have the god swords. These things are going to do, this does 145. The Ultima God Sword, this thing's going to do 174. So you're going to get a lot of bonuses out of that for blocking. And that's what you really want, is the highest block bonus you can get. Do I use ranged or magic? Not really. You could early on, if you're working on ranged and you wanted to level up, or magic, if you're working on ranged or magic and you leveling that up, I wouldn't necessarily use ranged or magic to level defense past, say, 50. I don't think it's worth it. I mean, you could theoretically use direct defense leveling with a two-handed sword or something like that. Or you could say, well, I'm going to be leveling up ranged for a while anyway. I'm going to work on ranged and defense, or magic and defense, and kind of tie the two together. You could certainly do that. Your ranged and magic will level up slightly slower because you're diverting some of that off. It's not because you're diverting the XP necessarily. It's because you're doing less damage. So I wanted to clarify that. And the way the XP breaks down is you get 0.4 XP per point of melee damage, or 0.2 XP per point of ranged or magic damage. So you're basically doubling the XP directly training defense as it is using magic or ranged. So I usually just like to train defense by itself. And typically what I do when I start off is I normally, and maybe this is good, bad, or I don't know, I have different game modes. I've tried different things. So at one point I used range to level up first. At another point I used magic. Mostly I typically go attack, strength, defense, and I'll get all three of those to level 10. I'll get them all to level 20. I'll get them to level 30, things like that. I will keep just incrementally raising them until I get to say level 50. Then I'll let strength go for a while. And somebody asked, the same person was asking about, I think it was, maybe it was two different comments, I don't remember, but somebody was asking about training levels and stuff like that and when to cut over and when to do things. It depends on how you approach things. You can level strength from fishing if you get the hidden fishing areas. So you can level that up there. So if you're like, I've got a modding account right now that I'm just testing, just tinkering around, just doing some things in the background. I leveled up strength to 40 or 50 just by fishing. I just let it run, just let it until it didn't make any more sense. So it depends on what level you've got certain things at. It depends on what gear you're at. You can approach these in many different ways. If you go with the magic route of leveling, if that's your first combat style, that can certainly be the first one. You're going to want to have a good source of runes and all that kind of stuff in advance. Now, your magic gear, let me go to the best magic gear here. Just go to the top one here. This gives you damage reduction, but it gives you no defensive bonuses. And it does not require defense. So in theory, what I'm driving at with this part of the conversation is that you could level up your ranged or magic and equip better and better ranged gear, or magic gear, get some damage reduction going and all that kind of thing to a certain extent. Now this is Throne of the Herald expansion, so we better back that down to say fire magic gear, because theoretically you could have high level 78 magic, get this with 5% damage reduction on here. But you don't need defense for this. So you can have decent damage reduction without having to level up defense skill. And you can do alt magic to raise magic. Like there's so many different ways of attacking this that you could be doing a decent amount of magic damage and not necessarily be worried about raising your magic level, and you could divert that XP over to defense magic. But our defense skill XP, not defense magic, defense skill XP. So kind of getting off on a little tangent there, but a lot of things are going to depend on how you're training everything else. So when I say that I normally do attack, strength, and defense at the same time, I kind of level them all up at the same level, get everything to say level 50, because once you get around level 50, you're pushing adamant gear, I think. What level is this? 30. Level 50 might be rune gear, because I think dragon's like level 60 or 70. This is level 40. Dragon gear must be level 60. Yeah. So once you're getting about level 40 or so, you're in rune gear, and that's kind of about the best gear you're going to get for a while until you get up to level 60 and you can get dragon gear. Now, the cool thing about this gear here is that the base gear, when you upgrade it to the silver and gold versions of it, it doesn't cost you any more defense levels. So this is level 40 gear. It will always be level 40 gear. Once I upgrade this to, I think we've got it over here on this side. And do I have rune fully upgraded? I do. So if I look at this rune shield, this is an unupgraded shield. It's got defense level of 40. If I take the fully upgraded gold version with damage reduction, it's still defense level of 40. They don't change that level requirement. So if you've got a good source of silver and gold bars, once you hit level 40 defense, you can just stop there for a while. You don't necessarily have to level defense up any further. Yes, it's going to impact your evasion rating and all that, but as I just showed you, the evasion rating doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. It does probably on the thicker monsters that have a higher chance to hit, and you're going to lower it down, and getting hit less often is a good thing. But once these things start breathing fire and doing a lot of things that just don't ever miss, it doesn't matter anyway. So that's a little bit on the training side. I directly train, I guess to wrap up the training side, I directly train defense. I don't typically use ranged or magic. I have used them in the past. I have noticed that I get less XP for them. So I typically just train ranged and magic directly and then train defense directly. I don't know that there's a better way to it. I don't know that there's more optimal, what's the most optimal spreadsheet version? I don't know. that's how I train it. Attack, strength, and defense. And then I do ranged and magic separately and kind of just leave it like that. And for gear progression, you are generally going to follow what smithing is. This is the same thing I'll probably tell you for ranged and magic. You go into this wherever you can craft the gear and just follow this in here. This is going to give you your blueprint. You can divert over at level 40. You can do, what was it? Rune gear's level 40. My memory's terrible. Rune is level 40. You also can get, do I have it handy in here? Let's see. What is it? Ice gear or something like that. I can't remember what it's called. Yeah. So we've got the ice helmets and stuff like that. This is level 40, but it also, it's level 40 defense, but it also requires level 40 range. So you need both. And this does give you a little bit of damage reduction. Then you've got the Myolite stuff, which is the exact same thing, except this one is governed by level 40 defense as well as level 40 range, magic. So in theory, yeah, and it's got a little bit less damage reduction than the ice gear does. So yes, you can get into some gear at level 40 and get some branching choices, but you're typically going to just stick with what you get from smithing or what you can find, you know, whatever the best stuff you can equip when you find it. Things change when you get started through the dungeons. So you will go through until you get to the volcanic cave. Now, once you get to the volcanic cave, you're going to want to try to grind out this ancient gear. That's what I typically do, is go for ancient gear here. And then you will go through the air god, water god, and earth god dungeon, and then you'll get ancient gear. And let me back up for a second. Ancient gear is, I think it's level 70. If I go in here, this is level 70. So ancient gear is going to be level 70. So you've got dragon gear at 60, ancient gear at 70, and then your god gear starts at 85. So if I go in here at the god helmet, that's 85. Well, that's range. Bad example. But it's the same thing. The Terran stuff is still 85 defense. You need level 85 to equip any of the god gear. So typically what I'll probably do is take, say, defense up to 40 or 50, maybe 60, somewhere in there, so I can equip the dragon gear. And then once I can equip that, then I start looking at getting on the ancient gear at level 70. And then once I start going through the god dungeons, I need to get that up to 85. Once I get it to 85, I could care less. And that's where I'm at with relic mode right now. Is I got it at one point, I got it to where I could just equip level 85 gear, and then I didn't care anymore. I have since raised it, but once you can equip the god gear, that's the highest level of defense you need in the base game. If we go off to, say, where is that at? I need gloves. There is the upgraded version of this, which is this spiked shell, and it's level 85 as well. So pretty much once you get into the god dungeons, you only need your defense to level 85. Do you want to raise it to 99? Yes, absolutely. You want all your skills up as high as possible all the time, but once you hit the god dungeons, you don't really need to focus on defense of 85. So a good rule of thumb is to just get your defense up to 85, and then you don't have to stop permanently, but you can get it up to 85 and then just kind of quit for a while and go off. Make sure your strength and attack is higher, 99 as soon as possible, and then get your defense raised up. Again, it helps with your evasion, but as I showed earlier with this demonstration, evasion is not necessarily the most important thing by a long shot. And let's see here. As far as progression goes, standard and hardcore can use smithing, so definitely take advantage of that, because you can get into smithing early on. You can have all the best gear. As you level up, you can keep it upgraded and everything going for that. Adventure mode, relic, and hardcore combat only are very situational and very different. In adventure mode, you have to buy each skill, so you may not have access, you may not prioritize unlocking smithing early on. Depends on how you play, depends on what skills you unlock. Relic mode is all based on what level and how many different dungeons you've done, so that's very situational as well. And that also gets you what skills you unlock and what levels you unlock there. Hardcore combat only is totally built on what you get from combat, so there is no skills you can use there. There is an Evasion Gem. This one's got, would I ever use this in practicality? Probably not. Not unless we got some weird game mode where speed run or something where I needed it. I probably wouldn't bother with it. The superior skill cape, there's a regular skill cape and a superior skill cape for Where is this defense? This gives you plus 80. Oh, you know, I probably should have put that on. But I think this adamant cape, I think that might be better. The obsidian cape. This comes from the adamant knights. So we've got 409,000. You know, I think the superior version of this, I think I've got it over here. Probably don't really matter, but where's my skill capes at? Here's the yeah, so the superior one gives you 5% reflect. Yeah, this gives you 120 bonus, which is actually better than what this cape has. So if I equip that, what are we looking at now? 403,000. Let's set that one here versus this is 409,000. So this is actually better. So this obsidian cape is still better. There's not really any scenario where I'm ever going to use the skill cape for defense, because you're going to get through probably going to get through the volcanic cave before you ever get to 99 defense to use this, unless you really work on defense. So I would be using the fire cape, which gives 1 or 2% damage reduction, whatever that gives. There's like not a scenario I would ever use that skill cape. I would probably use the obsidian cape before anything, and you can get a little bit of not damage reduction. You can get a little bit of defense bonuses from some of these capes. So like if you get astrology to 99, you're going to get a little bit of defense bonuses off of it. It's just a minute amount. If you have a 99 cape, it's better to use that cape than no cape. But if you can get the obsidian cape is going to be far better than that. And then once you get the fire cape from the volcano, you're just going to use that from that point forward, or the infernal cape, or you know what I mean? Like you're going to keep replacing it with just better capes that have more damage reduction. Let's see. We get a pet. We get 1% damage reduction with Leonardo. He is this one. Where's he at? It's it's a little turtle guy. I do not. Oh, here he is, right here. 1% damage reduction. So when you run defense long enough, you get your pet. That's 1% damage reduction, which is why I have part of the 3% damage reduction that I have. I think we get the other 1% from, it's one of the completion ones. I thought it was, oh, no, I thought it was, that's Into the Mist. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I thought it was Bane. Oh, all enemies have 1% damage reduction. I thought there was a full completion pet on here that gave, I don't know. I don't remember. Doesn't matter. Let's see here. There is no, I was looking at like agility tablets. There's not really, or I'm sorry, not tablets, but agility obstacles. There's not really an agility obstacle that I would ever take for evasion. Like even if there was one, I'm going to probably take something that preserves something or gives me more accuracy or something like that. There's so many other valuable things, more hit points, more damage reduction, more accuracy, things that are far more important than a little bit of evasion that doesn't really help out. Summoning tablet, we've got the occultist tablet, which is what I've got equipped here. If you really want to worry about global evasion, you can. This gives you global evasion, but I'm far more likely to worry about the synergy with this thing. So if we go look at, where is it here? If we go look at occultist, I would probably be looking maybe more for like this occultist familiar effect is doubled or something like that, or maybe this one, the turtle occultist one, where more evasion. This is more of a barrier kind of thing for this one here. You're giving the enemy evasion. If player is burning, grant 75 melee range and defense bonus. I probably wouldn't care about that. I'd probably be looking to combine the dragon one with something else to do more damage in some other way. Like the occultist one is one that I don't really use a whole lot of, but I might be using like this one here with the spider. It's very situational when I use the occultist one. I don't use it on purpose for evasion, is basically what I'm trying to say. And then on the astrology side, there is some defense. Which one is that? Tell us. So you're going to get a defense skill bonus, hidden defense skill XP bonus, and hidden defense levels off of it. This is basically the only thing on here. Reflect damage, yeah, that's cool, but that isn't evasion. Slayer skill XP, gold from monsters, Slayer coins, damage to Slayer area monsters. Like, the only thing that directly affects it is this first one up here for defensive skill XP and hidden defense level. So that's it. That's like the only bonus. There's nothing in agility. There is this potion from Herblore, but oops, I gotta be in combat to show that one. I can honestly tell you that I've never used this, and the only reason I would use it is the 10% chance to ignore stun and freeze. That's the only, and I noticed this the other day when I was playing on my relic mode. I was like, hey, that's got actual usage other than just evasion, because the evasion part is pointless. As I've demonstrated, it doesn't really matter. I would be more likely to use this for the stun and freeze resistance than anything evasion related. So this is probably another one of these very long videos. Hopefully it has been useful. And to sum all of this up, care more about your damage reduction than anything else. The gear that you equip is going to just automatically have better evasion as you go through smithing. Your bronze gear is going to have worse evasion than steel or divine or something like that. As you progress through the better gear, it's just going to give you better evasion. You're not picking gear based on evasion. You're picking gear on the damage reduction that you're going to get. For instance, these rune gloves give you, hey, they give you a great defense bonus on here. But for the money, where do I have these? Another quick example here. These paladin gloves don't give you any defense. They basically give you nothing, but they give you 4% damage reduction, which is far more invaluable than any of the defense bonus you would get from non-damage reduction gloves. So that's why I always push for the paladin gloves early on, because they give you damage reduction. The gloves you get from smithing all suck. None of these have damage reduction ever, which is kind of unfortunate. Even if this offered a little bit, this offers nothing. It offers some defensive bonus. Sure, it's better than nothing, but if you can get paladin gloves, paladin gloves are better in every way, even though they don't offer any defense bonus. So hopefully this video has been helpful, and that will do it for this one. We will catch you on the next one. Take care.